Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Women with Grit, where we interview dynamic women who all have one thing in common: grit. So come on in, grab your favorite beverage of choice, grab your snacks, and let your friends know that we are on. We have another dynamic guest on with us tonight, Miss Shandra McDonald. You guys are in for a tremendous treat. So you know how we do. We'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and leave your name, city, and state in the chat function so that we can go ahead and say hello to you. Go ahead as well and grab your favorite friend and let them know where they can catch up with us on Facebook, which is at www.facebook.com/exceptional women with grit. You can also find us on YouTube at www.youtube.com/the @ women with grit, or you can follow us online at www.womenwithgrit.com. So come on in the room. We are so excited to have on the stage of Women with Grit tonight, Miss Shandra McDonald. So let me tell you a little bit about this amazing woman. Shandra McDonald is an award-winning screenwriter, director, and producer with more than 30 years of experience in the television and film industry. Her projects have earned accolades from the Directors Guild of America, Atlanta Film Festival, IFP Film Festival, Hollywood Black Film Festival, Showtime Black Filmmakers Showcase, American Black Film Festival, AFI, and the 48-Hour Film Festival. Shandra has written, directed, and produced original content aired on networks including Showtime, Oxygen, TV One, CBS, BET, NBC, TLC, the Discovery Channel, the Fine Living Network, Aspire, Up TV, and the Turner Networks. Shandra's film projects have screened at international film festivals, including the British Film Institute, the Cannes Film Festival in France, and the FESPACO Film Festival in West Africa. She has streaming on Amazon Prime and iTunes. She recently directed a short film titled I'm Fine. She will direct another short film and feature in the next 2 years. Miss McDonald produced 2 film features last year: Old Head, which was shot in Philadelphia, and Forgetting Christmas, which was shot in Maryland. A musical collaboration she directed and produced at Clayton State University recently won first place for Best Musical at the San Diego International Kids Film Festival in 2023. Miss McDonald is actively growing her film production company, Kiss the Limit Productions, Inc., while proudly teaching graduate students writing, directing, and producing at the University of Georgia. She teaches second-year MFA graduate film students in Fayetteville, Georgia, near Trilith Studios. Welcome to the stage, Miss Shandra McDonald. Hi, Shandra. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to grace the stage of Women with Grit. We're so excited to have you on.
Me too. Me too.
Awesome. So we love to start the show really with our guests getting an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you and your journey. So tell us your unique story of grit.
Okay, wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here. I think my story starts off with my childhood coming from Gaithersburg, Maryland, where I was raised. I was born in Montgomery, Alabama. First, both of my parents are from Alabama. But I think that the story starts there when I was just a little girl telling stories all the time, and parents who allowed me to do that. And I was pretty gritty back then. Even they'll tell you about things with washing dishes. I wish I had done more of that back then, but I was consumed with my storytelling. And I had a mom who was kind enough and loving enough to give me some grace, and a dad who just overwhelmed me with movies. That's where my movie love comes from. But it started off with just kind of knowing what I wanted to do. I think I went to Howard University as an undergraduate student, and I also went to Howard University as an MFA student. And I was also in love with stories. I was committed to storytelling. I was always, whether at that point it was through journalism, and then it would evolve into film when I decided to go to film school after working in magazines and newspapers for many years, telling stories in the magazine industry, fashion, and also entertainment. But I always knew that there was something. I think it was when I was on a set, and this is a really important story because this is a good story for young people. How I just knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I was on a set with a photographer who for one of my fashion stories, and I literally had a boss who it was an internship, if you can believe it. I was a young girl in Florida doing this internship, and I had a boss who literally just kind of had me do it by myself. I had this whole fashion shoot, and I was supposed to be learning from him, and he was just like, figure it out. And it was because of my mom that in her training in fashion, how she encouraged, what she showed me when it came to that, and I put it into the journalism, the writing, that I did this fashion shoot for this paper, and it was on that set that a photographer came to me and said, "I don't think you're I don't think you're a writer. I think you're a filmmaker." And the thing about being a filmmaker for African Americans, especially African American women, I have an amazing cousin. I have family members. My cousin Joy, who was a filmmaker in our family, and all the relatives around there. But it's just one of those careers that you just don't do right away. It's a hard career. It's not an easy career to give birth to. So I think that's where the grit began. It began when I was really young, and then I just from there went to Howard, and after Howard once won an award, it took me to Los Angeles, and just been making content since then across television. Got an internship at Discovery Channel where I learned a lot about producing and post-production, and just been making stories and really trying to pour into powerful stories that change lives, which is the mantra of my company ever since then.
That is awesome and beautiful. We share at least that synergy of pretty much sharing stories of
Mm,
meaningful, at least in this case, we're doing it
yeah.
women. You're talking about the space of how you even got to where you are. And I do want to lean in on the experience in the film industry and how that has been for you, just entertainment as a whole. So
Mhm.
last week we had Tawanda Black, who is a radio personality, and she talked just about the space of breaking in. So as you think about even your career, and you talked about, what it's been like for you, especially as a woman and an African American, could you share a little bit more about that aspect of film and really having to put your put your stake in the ground as
Mm.
a woman in the industry?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The industry's hard. I mean, I always say my brother's an ER doctor. He's an amazing, amazing ER doctor in Maryland, and I always say that it's easier to be a doctor than to be a filmmaker.
Hmm.
It's
Wow.
work. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of resilience, and I think
Hmm.
that for me, coming from being in different places, being in Maryland, being in New York as a filmmaker, being in Los Angeles as a filmmaker, coming here, I came to Georgia in 2002, and I wanted to be in Atlanta. I had an aunt who lived here, and so it felt like home. I had, my auntie Margie was made create a sense of family for me here, and so I wanted to be near family, but I wanted to the industry was growing, but it was hard. It was hard because I respected crew. I've always respected crew, and I've always respected directors, and I've always respected, below the line individuals who are on crew, PAs, becoming producers, first ADs. But I wanted to write and I wanted to direct, and so I had to really, really hone into opportunities. And for me, teaching became an amazing sense of support financially, but also creatively, because while I was teaching students, I was also becoming a better director, a better writer, a better filmmaker. But in Georgia back then, it wasn't as much of an emphasis for above the line. So I had to find those opportunities. I had to be in the right place for those opportunities and create a certain level of excellence around what things look like. So the filmmakers who I was producing for, filmmakers who I was directing for would want to keep hiring me and keep having me come back. So it's a balance. It's a balance. I had a friend of mine today who I was on the phone with talking. Her name is Davita Walker, and we work together on projects. She said, and we're going to work on something like, together again. And she was saying to me, she said, Chandra, she's like, you might be tough. You might be tough when it comes to the expectations you have for people, but you really want things to be a certain way. I really believe in excellence. It comes from my parents, comes from my mom, from my dad, and I think that's something that has sustained me in the industry. It's really helped me to, to be this way, but to put it in my work as well.
Mm. Whole dynamic, just the aspect of putting in the work and making sure that people that you're seeing, that you're heard, that you're
Yeah.
diligent, in the space that you occupy. So you've mentioned that. And relationships. Can you
Mm.
share a little bit about how important it has been for you to establish those relationships? Because what you talked about, which was being positioned and diligent, I think also lends itself to you have to be ready, but also you have to have sponsors, I would imagine, that help to bring you into rooms that you otherwise wouldn't occupy.
Yeah, relationships are important. It's hard. I'm an independent filmmaker, and when you're an independent filmmaker, you're balancing a lot. Sometimes you're balancing another job, sometimes you're balancing other responsibilities. I mean, in the future, my desire would be, I mean, I love teaching. I'll probably always be connected to teaching in one way or another. And there was a point where I first got into teaching where I said, I think I'll just do this until I go here, but now it's just like a part of my system, and I've developed so many relationships there. Teaching has helped me in a lot of capacities with my filmmaking, with equipment, with teachers who believe in my work and say, okay, we're going to let her go out and do this, and we're going to give her this equipment. But going back to your other questions about relationships, it's tough. It's because you have to be respectful of the people who are working for you, and you have to try to create a spirit of generosity where people want to continue to work for you, but you also have to have expectations for the kind of work that you want to do. Otherwise your brand won't be your brand, and things can be impacted. But I try as much as I can, and I'm not always perfect. Sometimes things happen. I try to lead with kindness and grace and generosity. And I'm pretty keen on treating everyone with respect. When I'm on a set, I'm going to treat the PA like I treat a producer or I treat an investor. So that's what's really important to me when it comes to kindness and grace in that capacity. But just being in a good spirit with the collaborators I have, and looking, the whole idea about helping someone below you, someone who's wanting to be where you are, and then who's on your same level, and then having mentors. I think that really has helped me a lot with my spirit, with my creativity, and just, what I stand by, what's really important to me.
Absolutely. We've said on this show, and it's so interesting to hear a guest because you guys don't know one another. But when we
Mm.
talk about the recipe for success for women, it's usually the having the right mentors, sponsors,
Mhm.
coaches, and network. That
Yeah,
tends to come up. Who's in your tribe? Who are the people that are rooting for you? Who
yeah,
has your ear? And who are the people who are pretty much telling you that, who are stretching you to grow? That's the aspect of the coach, who's the people that's in the room that's giving you the opportunity, as you have mentioned as well. And then who are those that are mentoring you in the industry and kind of giving you
hmm
insight so that you can be successful. So it's
yeah.
great
And
to
sometimes
even
it's
hear
your
you say that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's your girlfriends. I mean, I've got some of the best girlfriends too who just support
Mm-hmm.
me, unconditionally, and just really breathe into my work too. So the relationships in the industry are important as well. Family is important, but sometimes just your circle.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so lean in on that. So for you, it's been your girlfriends that have showed up for you and
Hmm.
have been a part of the journey for you, as well as your family. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got a wonderful family. I've got a sister, and who's got a new baby, and
Aw.
she's a cutie. She's a cutie. She'll be in a movie one day, and my son. I mean, I have a son, and I think my grit comes from him too. He understands when mom has to work. He understands when mom. He understands that he's my first love. I mean, God is a first love as well. But he understands that he's like a love, and then my filmmaking, I have two children. I have my son and I have my filmmaking.
Right.
And so he makes me feel gritty as well. He empowers me because when I'm off doing my projects and I'm off shooting, he's like, go do it, mom, and that's important when we talk
Right.
about women, because, when we talked about children, because it would be easier for him to say, well, I need you all for myself. But he's very giving in that way. And it's important to what I do.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a little bit about that. So we share that in common. We're boy moms,
We're
and
moms.
and having sons, I think, that support the journey, or even as a parent,
Yeah.
where you have to split time in a way that is meaningful so
Yeah.
that neither
Yeah.
of them fall. So how
Yeah.
is that balance going for you when it comes to, because I would imagine like when you're in the film industry, you don't necessarily have the same hours. There has to be flexibility and you have to be on set
Mhm.
at a certain time. So how does
Mhm.
that work for you in terms of balancing home and the industry?
It's not always easy. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, Sundays are days when I cook sometimes, because sometimes you feel like it's the only day you can cook
Yeah.
because you have so much to do.
Mhm.
I'm blessed that I have a mother who did a lot. She did a lot. She was involved in so many organizations. She worked full time. She was a great mom. She was a great wife. And so she kind of showed me what that looked like. And she also showed, and I also am a child who grew up with a mom who felt loved from her parents all the time, but also felt independence and where my lane was, right? And so that's one of the ways that I balance it is with him. I get him to understand that mom has to go and do this. I've got to go do this. These are things that are not only important to our future financially in ways, but also important to who I am and my soul and my spirit. Again, I'm a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller. And so, he gets that, the times that I spend with him and basketball and these other things that's important too. But when I'm not at those games, I always tell him, you play like I'm there. I had a mother one time say to me, you need to be at every single game. And I was just like, no, I don't. No, I don't. I mean, are you kidding? For basketball? They've got like 9,000 games. And he was like, Mom, you do not have to come all the time. And he's been that way for for a while. And so I think
Mhm.
it's just being true to who you are and being
Mhm.
real with your child, real with yourself, and just knowing that. And I think, even when you're in a relationship, just helping them to understand, you're going to get a lot of me, but you're not going to get all of it. You're just not. I mean, you're going to be a priority and you're going to be important, but I also have another thing that's very important to me and that makes me a better person in the relationship, in my coupling with you. So you just have to acknowledge the love that you have for your craft and for what it is. I mean, absolutely.
And I love that you said that you're going to get a lot of me, but not all of me. Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of
Yeah.
times people lose themselves in
Mhm. Mhm.
relationships,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And then it's
Yeah,
kind of, we're on the quest of self discovery again.
it
So
is.
the aspect that you recognize immediately and upfront that there's a boundary and that there is a clear distinction because that's healthy and that helps
Mhm.
you, especially
It
as you're
is.
working on your purpose and your passion to continue the art of
Yes.
storytelling.
Yes, yes. It is, it is. I mean, I learned it from my mom, but strangely enough, Francis Ford Coppola, do you know who he is? He did The Godfather, did some other films.
Hmm.
He said one time that the thing that he loved about his wife was that he felt as though he could have a lot of her, but he couldn't have all of her. She was working, she
Mm,
was creating
yeah,
content, and that was intriguing to him. And so, you
yeah,
know, that's kind of how it is, and I think that's okay. Again, my dad was always very sustained, not needing all
yeah.
that time. It's a dance, right? The family, the career, all of it is a dance. Hmm. Not perfect, it's never perfect, but you try to make it all work. Hmm.
It's a give and take. It's the opposites. It's the tug and pull, the back and forth, but it's still the aspect of not losing yourself in
Yeah.
such a way that you can still keep that balance and remain
Hmm.
healthy,
Hmm.
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, I have a question for you, which is about self limiting beliefs. So,
Mm.
this is, when you think about whether it's been in your journey along the way, in your career, what is one self limiting belief that you have either that you've overcome or one that you're working through in
Mhm.
your life?
I think A self-limiting belief that I've had to overcome is the idea that things have to be perfect when it comes to my creation. I was just having a conversation today with one of my students, a former student named Rebecca Myers, who is a young student who I love mentoring and being there. And she has a beautiful script that she's working on. And I've been telling her, I said, Rebecca, just get it out there. And I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, Rebecca. It just has to be your best work. If you can say that you gave your best, and you tried your hardest, then that counts for a lot. And that's one thing that I try to do now in my own life. When you're in the throes of making a film, especially when I'm directing, you're doing so much and there's so many things coming your way because you have to balance so much. I mean, you are the central focus point of the film in which everyone looks to, everyone comes to. And I'll remember one of my life coaches, her name is Melissa Roberts. She said, Chandra, remember your why. Like, why are you doing this project? So for me, it's the giving back. It's the what the project means to the community. It means to the world. It means we're here. But it's also just I'm showing up. That's what's perfect. My giving my best is perfect. Am I going to make a mistake? Yeah. Am I going to do things that I shouldn't have done? Absolutely. But I'm going to do like my dad always says, I'm going to make my own mistakes and I'll recover. I'll be okay, but just trying not to be so perfect. I think a lot of people in my industry, they sit projects on the shelf. They don't send things out because perfectionism hurts so many of us. And I'm not saying that I do it right all the time, but I try to live by that mantra. Like, God doesn't want me to be perfect. So, why am I putting that pressure on myself?
Is just, I mean, we could talk all day on the space of perfectionism because it is
Yes.
a trait that many people, that we work through. It's
Mhm.
something even, I've worked through as well, right? But the space of it to what you're talking about is lean into it. It's like you said, recognize that remember your why, and it's what the project
Mhm.
means to the community
Yeah.
at large. Do
Mhm.
you think that having a vision that is connected to a bigger cause is
Mhm.
what keeps you in it and keeps you going and keeps your passion alive?
I think it helps,
Mhm.
especially, when I produce. I think that that's a part of it as well. When I produce, I'm surrounding the team. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that the team is moving forward and that we're getting to the goal, which is the project. I mean, producing is a lot of different layers. When I produce, I like to have big crews, and because I like to trust enough people to do what they need to do. 100%. But when I'm on set directing, again, it's a lot of different things coming at you. And so the why does help me, but also the art. I mean, right before this, I was talking about framing, and I love the art. I love the art of filmmaking, and I love a lot of the photographer, a lot of the directors I work with. My friend Chris Hamilton, my friend Mike Cook, my friend Kathleen Kelly, DPs. They're all photographers. I love the frame. I love working with folks who are passionate about that as well. So that's, I think there's a point where when I'm in it, I'm having fun. So once you get past the why, and most people say, like, once I'm in the zone, I'm really in the zone when I'm on set and I'm on directing. And so it's, but yeah, just to go back to what you're saying, it's just, I think it's a faith walk too. I mean, I think, I kind of know that God wants me to do this. He wants me to tell these stories. So I'm like, I got to serve him. If God says go and do it, and he says he's got me, he's got me. And so when it's hard and it's tough, just know that God has me and I'm going to be okay.
Where would you say that faith comes from? The belief in, because to your point, faith is oftentimes just stepping out in the space of risk and leaning into it. So,
Mhm.
was that a part of your upbringing? Was that something that you have honed along the way as it relates to just your faith?
I think it's from my upbringing. I think you hone it along the way as well. But I have one of my spiritual mentors is my uncle James, who's a pastor, and he's just
Mm,
been such a wonderful spiritual force in my life.
mm.
Um, you know, I want to give back more to my faith every day as much as I can. But I do walk with God. I do hear from God, and it keeps me accountable. It keeps me accountable. But I think especially when you're in those moments where you're under the stress of a project and you need that, I think that's when I just try to call it upon as best I can to be prayerful, to be faithful, and it doesn't mean that I'm exclusive of other people's religions or faiths. I'm going to be comforting and understanding. I mean, I'm a Christian. That's what I aspire to. But I think that when you're doing film projects, it's a crucible of different people, different ethnicities, different races, genders, everything. But I think at the core of it is just how I grew up as a child, and my parents. My parents are pretty good people. They're not perfect, but I think that most people would say my parents are very kind and they're very generous. And my grandfather was a pastor, and so our spirituality is very important to us. Yeah, it's interesting because my dad's also a big sci-fi head, and we're also, Lord of the Rings. We're also, we liked a lot of sci-fi and other things as
Mhm.
well. But we feel like the Lord made it, so He blesses it.
Amen.
Color
Amen to
purple, all those
yeah.
things, right?
Awesome. So this is a little bit different, and it's
Mhm.
okay if you don't have one or you defer. But what would you say is one of the most interesting stories that you have told?
Hmm. The most interesting stories that I've told.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think I have one. People who know this story are probably like, "Oh God, she's gonna tell this story again." But I think it's true. It's truly an example of how self determination can be guiding and inspiring in a lot of ways. So before I came to Howard University, I was at Boston University. And I enjoyed Boston University. I made a lot of great friends. My brother was at Brown University. My friend Natalie was at Franklin Pierce. So it was great. I was in, New England, and I was doing awesome things. But it was just a little expensive, two kids at two different colleges at that time. It was just a little expensive. And I knew that I wanted to intern at Essence Magazine. Okay. I knew I wanted to intern there. And I said, my parents are never going to send me there. Paying Boston University tuition, it is not going to happen. I wanted to live in New York. I mean, my mom had been back and forth. My dad went to school in New York at one point, and they both had they knew New York. My mom would always travel there. And maybe that's why I kind of got a taste of it, because she would travel with her fashion shows, and
Yeah.
I knew what New York was. But I said, there's no way they're gonna send me. So I literally knew ahead, like, I want to intern at that school. And so what I did was I said, okay, I'm gonna craft an approach. And I am going to transfer from Boston. Well, first I said I'm going to try Howard out. Okay, I knew that Howard had a really good journalism program. Went there for a semester. Didn't make it past homecoming. I was like, and I was like, I'm leaving. My dad says that he was 100% at the time, but it took him a little bit of a bit at first to be 100% about that decision. But I knew that I wanted to intern at Essence. I knew that I wanted to save this money. I knew that I wanted to do a number of other things, in the summer opportunities. And so I said to myself, I'm going to get a job at the school newspaper, which was Howard. And again, Howard's an amazing school, always was, always has been. So I knew the reputation would precede itself. And I'm going to interview the editor of the newspaper of the fashion magazine at Essence. And on the third time, I'm going to ask her for an internship. And that's exactly what I did. And that's exactly how I got the internship. And I love telling young people that story because you sometimes, I think, you see so many things in front of you and you're like, oh, I can't do it, I
Mm-hmm.
can't make it. um but I put forth the energy and I did the work, right? Getting on the paper, being a
That's right.
fashion story editor, that was hard work. Calling up to Essence, interviewing her. But I think the more we can believe in ourselves and believe in
Mm-hmm.
our destiny, right? In terms of what can happen. And sometimes it doesn't happen exactly like that. Sometimes something else happens. But I love that story for me. And that younger self she was that way. She knew, she had that confidence to say, I'm going to do that. And my parents supported me, and and pay for my tiny time. Well, I lived on NYU's campus, and I'll never forget. So I did all this. Let me tell you this funny story. So I did all this. I set all this up, and I was just like, the gritty person making this happen. I'll never forget, like on my first day, I walk out of Essence magazine and walk into Times Square, and that's when it hit me like, this is scary. There were like anti-protesters doing something, and that's when Times Square was interesting, right? So, I played it off, went back to my dorm, and I was fine. I never told my parents how scared I was that first night. I was just like, oh, I don't know about being here. But that's kind of how life is. Sometimes, you're gonna look out and you'd be like, wow, I rolled back the carpet for this one, but it was
Yeah.
worth it. I mean, that opportunity led to a ton of other opportunities, and that fear. I mean, my sorority sisters, I'm an AKA, they all made
Mhm.
sure New York was okay for me when I was up there. So I had a good time and got a lot out of the experience.
Good. And I think that that is wonderful. And it's a beautiful story, like you said, of self determination and telling yourself yes and
Yeah.
seeing, not an obstacle, but seeing a step. And I
Yeah.
think to your point, sometimes we see, a little bit of a rise and consider it an obstacle and
Mhm,
stop.
mhm,
But you said, no, what do I need to do to set a plan in motion so
mhm.
that I can attain that? And at the end of the day, the worst that could happen is there's a no, right?
Right. Yeah.
At the end of the day, which I think is phenomenal. So, believe it or not, we are more than halfway through our time.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I'm going to pull you back, give you an
Okay.
opportunity to grab a drink and grab
Okay.
some water, and
Okay.
then I'll pull you back for the second half. Now, before we go, when we come back, the question that I would love for you to answer is, as a story writer, right? You're
Mhm.
writing everyone else's story. But as you think about and reflect on your life, if you
Mm.
have or if you are going to write your
Mm.
own story, what would
Ooh.
the title be? What would the
Ooh.
title
Oh,
of your story be?
oh God. Okay.
So I'll ask you that as soon as we come back. All
Okay.
right.
Okay.
All right. Wow. You guys are, and again, hopefully you guys are grabbing a lot of these nuggets that Shandra McDonald is dropping for you. So again, you guys are tuned into Women with Grit with Shandra McDonald. She is an award-winning filmmaker, director, producer, and writer. And you'll just have to roll back and go back and listen to it again because you don't want to miss this. I mean, she's dropping a lot of really great nuggets. She talked about making sure that you're in position as well as being diligent, right? So even when you get the bar, when you get the baton passed with to you, you want to be able to run with it. She talked about the space of how perfectionism can hurt you, right? And sometimes we get stuck in that loop of perfection and we want it to be exactly right. No, we get it out there. And and I love the way that she said, that when it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to just be your best work. And that's really what it is. And so being able to delve into that. So I'm not going to go through all of the nuggets because I want you guys to go back and listen to it from the beginning or also listen to it at the end. But again, you are tuned into Women with Grit right here on Facebook. You can find us at www.facebook.com/exceptional women with grit, or you can find us on YouTube at www.youtube.com/the @ symbol and Women with Grit, or you can find us on our website at www.womenwithgrit.com. So in either case, continue to join us again, like, share, as well as leave your name, city, and state in the chat function so that we can greet you accordingly. Last but certainly not least, please leave any questions that you have for Shandra in the chat, and we will be sure to get them over to her. So we're so excited to have her on this evening. We are here live with Women with Grit. And again, as you guys have noticed, Partner in Crime is not here. Lee is traveling this week, but we're having a wonderful time and a dynamic opportunity. So we'll go ahead and be able to say hello to Lee. He'll be here in the comments as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Shandra back on stage. And again, that question we had for her was, Shandra, if you were writing your story, what would the title be? And even expound upon, why.
Okay. Okay. So sorry, Mom. I'm going to curse just a little bit. I would call it a badass Barbie telling stories that transform people's lives.
Wo-
That's called my story.
Say that one more time. Say that one more time for the
A
people in the
badass
back. I love
Barbie,
that.
maybe even a badass black Barbie, telling stories that transform people's lives.
I love that. Okay, now and tell us a little bit more about why that. Why that title?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that the Barbie part comes from just my love for fashion, my love for hair, nails, makeup. I mean, when that movie came out, listen, that movie was destined to be for me. It's very narcissistic, but it literally came out the day for my birthday, right? And because of how Barbies back in the day, that whole lineage, the whole affinity that young girls have with Barbies. Some black people didn't even believe that their daughter should play with Barbies because of what it meant culturally, et cetera, et cetera. But my parents were very, they were very culturally affirming. I had some Barbie dolls, but I just think that it was a beautiful way to say, okay, this is the stories that I wanted to tell. This is the beauty that I wanted to have as a filmmaker. A lot of filmmakers, a lot of times I think as a woman, sometimes people can undermine you and your femininity as a filmmaker. Like you can't be beautiful. You can't have, hair. You got to come on screen with, and if you look too good, you're not a good filmmaker. I think someone actually said that one time. I'm just like, what? Like that inspires me. But again, for me, because my pathway is through fashion, it's through, all these different things. I mean, shoots, photo shoots, I bring that into my storytelling and my films. And people will say, I remember there was a critic one time who said she's always going to have like hair, nail, make. She's always going to have set props, design. I mean, I'm always still world building, but I don't world build just happy, happy, joy, joy. I also world build really, honest and thought provocative, sometimes a little dark. I'm one of those filmmakers who doesn't have a problem going into the recesses of darkness. There's light for me. I always try to espouse to some light in my storytelling. Um, but and again, I mean the emphasis behind the Barbie is not just because she's beautiful with like pigeon toed or whatever those toed feet were, and it's all about pink. And even though I'm an AK and I love pink, it's not all about that. It's also just about the representation of what that image is and what the representation of what that looks like. Okay. Recently, within the whole Barbie lineage, they were talking about how Barbie had so many careers. I don't think I even realized until I saw that movie that Barbie never married Ken. That. I
Really?
was like, oh my God, she never did. She did in my stories. She totally married Ken. They had kids and they had a family. But in the movie, it was kind of different. But I loved one of my friend Lakita got me like the 100th
Mhm.
anniversary of Barbie, and she had tons of careers, tons of careers.
Mm.
So giving women that idea that they can be badass in lots of ways, was
Mhm.
something that I think it inspired me. And so within the storytelling, with everything, I mean, just I have two nieces. I have a beautiful niece, Ella, and I have one, Sophia, and brother has a beautiful family in Maryland. And I just try to
Mhm.
inspire her. She has a great mom, and we all do amazing things. But um, just trying to be a representation for our family, the young people, but also really just I lean into stories that are very thought provocative, and so that's
Mhm.
what it would be for me. Yeah.
Man, I love that. I still need to see that movie. I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's got some great things to it. It's powerful, but I think, I
Okay.
mean, I wasn't a big baby doll person, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I just wasn't. I love
Yeah.
babies, like, but I wasn't
Yeah.
a big baby doll person. So I love that they cherish that, and it's unfortunate what happened at the Oscars with that, where the director didn't get a nomination or the actress. That was a huge issue with how they were underrepresented. I mean, again, these are the battles that we fight.
Yeah.
These are the battles that and I think they did get they did actually give them an award
Mhm.
for something. I think they did give them an award for something, but I mean that's just proof positive for how it is. You can do all those things, top film, top grossing film, and
Yeah.
still, I mean, and we, how that happens for African Americans in our story. I mean, there's a whole
Mhm.
nother level of that, but there's the grit that we still do to continue making those stories, creating our own platforms.
Yeah.
I fight for that as a filmmaker. I fight for those voices across the university in terms of, making sure that there's a seat at the table for people of color,
Yeah.
students of color. I mean, it's all a part of it.
And very much, would you say that you feel that the needle is moving with everything that you're doing? Do you feel like the needle is moving, or that there's still a lot of work to be done?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I definitely think it is. I mean, I definitely think in terms of, do you mean in terms of the progress for
Hmm.
what's
Yeah, there's been, because at least, and I'm not in the industry as close, but from the outskirts, we see the strikes that have been taking place across
Mhm,
the
mhm,
industry for better pay, and conversations even with Taraji and things of that nature.
mhm.
So I guess the thought is really, do you see, even with those actions and movement, that there's movement happening within the film industry or
I think
film?
it's happening, but I think there's still some setbacks. I mean, you hear
Hmm.
about shows. I mean, Issa Rae just published an article, that I haven't read the whole thing about wanting to open her own studio. Because I mean, she's done some amazing projects that the a project she just did recently called Rap Shit that she did got canceled. Um, Lovecraft Country, an amazing show, got canceled. Black show, black creators, and so I think it's getting better because I
Yeah.
think financially, economically, we are continuing to take control ourselves and say we're going to do this. I mean, think of people like Charles King, who's a producer out in Los Angeles. That we're taking back our ownership of storytelling. We're saying, well, if you're not going to do this for us, we'll do it for ourselves. But there's times where like at the Oscars, where you see um, you know, that there's people who've been nominated and people of color who've been nominated and people who are, sitting in the audiences and you just, it's good, but it's still not great. I really wanted Sterling Brown to win. I mean, sorry, Robert Downey Jr. I'm sorry. But I loved his performance. It was so honest. It was so amazing. And so it's getting better. I mean, it's getting better. And we have to be resilient. We have to sit in the audience and we have to, we have to go to those awards and sometimes we don't get those awards. Sometimes it happens. But then I think bringing it back to us and our own studios and our own vehicles. I mean, I have this idea that if all the NBA players in the world would just give a little bit of money to to causes the film industry, can you imagine how much we could economically do and have in the society when it comes to us as people of color and what we could control? um it's just a tough world.
Yeah.
Grateful that there's a place for us, but just grateful, just want to get to a point where we don't have to always apologize for our stories, and it can be more about um just giving to us not because we haven't received it, but because we really earned it.
Yes. And I love that charge that you said, because at the end of the day, what are the stories and the narratives that are,
Mhm,
you know,
mhm,
being set in motion? What are the stories that are being taken forward?
mhm.
And to your point, having the right funding support behind that, and actually putting out the stories that you've mentioned are thought provoking, honest, true, and trustworthy is really necessary and needed, to your point.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
good charge. That's a good charge.
yeah,
So if
yeah.
you're in the NBA or any one of the leagues,
Please, please keep supporting. I mean, yeah, I just worked with 2 filmmakers, Josh Meekins and Tony Chenault from Old Head, which is a feature I produced last year, and also, our cook, Cadell Cook, who did, the film he did the film, Forgetting Christmas, that's gonna be coming out at some point,
hmm
and those guys are
which was
resilient.
great. I did see it. It was
Thank
it was so
you.
awesome. It was
Wasn't it
awesome.
wonderful? Such a
It
sweet
was.
film. It's so
And
great.
so, like you said, inspiring and thought provoking. Some of the things of the characters that you pointed out specifically
Yeah.
as it relates to Alzheimer's, never would have
Mhm.
thought about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the grit that we had to have to make that, I mean, they were in Maryland. I was here. I had to craft a whole virtual way of producing. I went up to Maryland for um, a week and I did location scouting, you know, in Tennessee. But I was proud of the fact that I said, okay, I know how we can do this. I know how we can create and we can craft this so that you can have me as your producer along with other producers who were there. But we can forge ahead in making this happen. And I'm very proud of Cadell. He did a fabulous job, and it's not over. There's more to come. Tony and Josh too.
Good. They were great. They were really great. It was
Yeah,
such a, I mean, like it was really, really well done,
it
Chandra.
was. It was. It was.
So, what would you say to a young woman? Doesn't have to be a woman, but a young
Mm,
individual that is growing up and aspiring to be in the film industry,
mm,
whether it's a
mm,
filmmaker, director, producer,
mm.
like what would you say are the top three things in terms of advice that you would give them?
Well, the other day, strange as God is funny. I was at Publix, and there was this cute little girl who was bagging my groceries. She was so cute. She had like the little ponytails and hair and little glasses. And so she's like, "Ma'am, would you like me to walk you out to your car?" And I said, "Sure." So we're walking out to her car, and I asked her questions. Where are you from? And she said, "Oh, I'm a senior, and I want to be a filmmaker. I'm going to SCAD." And I was just like, "What? Oh my goodness!" And
Yeah.
I told her what I did. And so what I told her was, I said, continue. She said she wanted to be a director. I said, don't be afraid to move if you have the right opportunity. I said, Georgia is wonderful. There's a lot of opportunities here. It's if you want to be an above the line individual, like a writer, producer, director, it's going to take money or it's going to take opportunities. And I told her, I said, but just do whatever you can to create content over and over and over again. If it's small content, if every single year do a film, when you're in school do a film, but again, don't put too much pressure on yourself about how perfect it has to be or has to look. The thesis film that I did when I was at Howard University, where I won a student DGA award, the gentleman Roy Campanella, who was instrumental in, he was on the committee. He invited me out to Los Angeles to be in charge of these movies in post production for BET. I mean, that film was not perfect. It was a lovely film about civil rights and something I experienced when I was younger. It's called Claudia Makes a Difference. But the post production I learned because I was a producer at Discovery Channel. I put myself in a position to work in a job where I could, make money, but I could also learn a craft. But I was creating content. I was creating content at Discovery Channel. You have to just, what I would say to young filmmakers is just try to find those internships where you're writing, try to find those opportunities where you're in school. Go to school. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a proponent of school. Some people feel as though you don't need to go to school, you should just, I mean, it's not to say that you do YouTube school. I mean, you can, right? As long as YouTube school means you're creating content. The thing that you get at a university is you pay your tuition and you get to make projects. Okay. So I'm at the University of Georgia now teaching grad students for the first time, which is wonderful. And I love, helping them to understand how to craft these projects and how to produce these projects. But the former schools that I've been at, AIU and Clayton State University. I had a little time at Georgia State. A lot of times I would teach first generation college students, and I would love seeing these students come out of Clayton with this huge body of work. And someone would say, "Oh, I'm not going to enter it in film festivals," or "Oh, I'm not going to do this." I said, "Listen, don't do that. Just enter it. Someone will see it." Again, it's more about the effort than it is the perfection. I mean, there's some filmmakers who are doing very well in this industry who early on when they started, their work wasn't perfect. It was not perfect, but maybe their second or third film got better and they learned on the job. So that would be my advice. My advice to young filmmakers would be go to school, get a degree, go to grad school. My dad was the one who said, Lynn, that's my middle name. My family calls me Lynn. You need to go to grad school. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And he's like, you need to go. And he was right. I mean, we could have a whole nother story about being a woman and how
Mhm.
being a mom and
Yeah.
how grad school helped me to be able to be a good mom to my child.
Mhm.
But by going to grad school, by having MFA, I not only was, having a degree, having a terminal degree that could lead to teaching, security, but I was honing my craft over and over and over again. So that would be my advice. Just create those projects. And again, I have nothing against people who want to just do it on their own. But it's a little bit harder sometimes. But whatever it takes, just make those projects.
Whatever it takes, hone the craft, do it over, write the content, be consistent.
Yeah. Look at Issa
And
Rae. Look at Issa Rae with Aqua Black Girl, right?
yeah,
I've
yeah.
met her before. She was
Hmm.
just someone at the film festival and you just talking to, but she was just doing it.
And it's usually that, right? You have to just be consistent in it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Like
Oh,
that, perfection is built along the way, but you have to start.
exactly.
You got to jump into it. You got to be willing to release the reins of it being exactly perfect.
Mhm,
So I
mhm,
appreciate
mhm.
you saying that and sharing that. It's a great reminder, even for
Mm,
me, in that.
yeah.
So
But you know
thank
what else is important with that is
you.
is not letting the naysayers kill your dream.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times, I mean, can you imagine if Issa Rae had let someone tell her when the first episode of Awkward Black Girl that it wasn't perfect? I mean, we wouldn't have had an Issa Rae. I mean, you have to keep going, and you have to believe in yourself enough to say, and it's hard. I mean, it's not easy for any of us, but you just have to know. And I guess that's why it's like that's why I was telling my one student, just do your best. Did you do your best? If you did
Right.
your best, then why would you not put it in a film festival? Why would you not do this? Because your best deserves to be acknowledged because you tried.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
tried. Hmm.
I think that there's such a parallel to your point with careers or industries that are in the arts and the
Hmm.
correlation with confidence
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you are absolutely leaning into how much
Mhm.
you believe in whether it's your craft or
Mhm.
your ability to produce, your ability to impact, tell a
Mhm.
story, the whole nine. And
Yeah.
so, even as a woman, to your point, I can see the parallel with even your confidence in saying, hey, I'm going to knock on this door. I'm going to send this file. I'm going to continue to create a path because I believe in the ability to share and tell thought provoking stories.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
awesome.
Mhm.
We are, this has been so great. I do want a part two because I want to hear more about, being a mom in grad school and how that has helped you in your life. If we were to, do that and we can talk about the space of even bringing you back, but give us a snippet. What would that look like for you? How has grad school helped you in your journey?
Well, going to grad school, okay, early on, I mean, I went to grad school in 1995 and I graduated from Howard in 98. There was a point where here comes my son. I'm married and um I'm having a child and Tom Anderson, who's another great boss who I just owe so many things to. I'll never forget when I had my son. I was like, Tom, I cannot go back to work. I was there and I was supposed to work a whole week, and I was like, I need 3 days, Tom. Like, I got to go back to little man. And just the fact that I had that MFA degree that led me to that. And he knew my work. He knew what I was doing. He knew my projects. Um, teaching has always given me the flexibility to lean into being a good mother. Right. And so I mean, again, I'm diehard. Like, I had my child at a month. I was on a set. Like, he was born in November. And I remember working on a set in like December or well, maybe my mom's watching. Let me see, January. But I'm not married anymore. But my ex husband, he knew who I was, and he was just like, "Give me the baby, give me the baby, and you go do what you do best." Right. So, grad school, going to get an MFA. A lot of people sometimes feel like, well, if it slows you down to a certain degree, and sometimes it can. slow you down a little bit because the grind's a little bit different. But that's just a choice that I made. I wanted to show up for him. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have a career where I could have both, where I could be a filmmaker, I could be a professor, I could be at the time I could be a wife. I'm not married anymore, but I wanted to be present to that part of myself. But everyone knew, including that little baby who I was, feeding and coming home and doing this. Everyone knew I was a filmmaker. So sometimes certain aspects of education, graduate school, it gives you more options to that degree. But it doesn't mean that everyone has to do it that way. I have some friends who were moms, and they also were on sets and they were doing their thing, and coming back and forth. But I knew what I needed, right? Like I chose to go. Well, my dad, it was his idea. My dad pushed me and encouraged me to go to grad school, but I realized, especially during that time, how integral it was to me in my life. And now he's 15, and so, oh Lord, he can stay at home by himself and he can cook for himself. How old is your son again? Your son is
13,
listen, it's coming. I'm telling you, when you leave him at home by yourself, he's gonna be more prepared than you are. You're gonna be like, "Are you okay? Are
Yeah,
you okay?" He'll be like,
he does
"Mom."
now.
Especially boys now. Boys are it's a whole different story. Sometimes you gotta hug your son and be like, "Do you still love me?"
Mine will. He'll check. He'll check on me. He's still there. Kind of
Mine
want to
checks
whisper
on
it,
me
but yeah,
too. He
yeah.
does it. He
Uh-huh.
will. He will check on me. Yeah, but
So, mama's
it's a
boys.
balance. It's a balance.
It really, really is. And that's a whole nother conversation. We'll have to talk about that too, which was,
Okay.
how has it been? We talked a little bit about balancing in the film industry, but then with a layer of being a single mom, right? Or with
Yes.
I guess a now teen in the household. But we'll save
Yes.
that for another
Okay.
time.
Okay.
But this has been so great, Shandra. Thank you
It's
so much for taking the time out
my
of your
pleasure.
busy, busy schedule to grace the
Thank
stage
you.
of Women with Grit.
Thank you.
Um, Tell our guests how they can continue to connect with you. If you have any upcoming projects or
Mhm.
products that you would love to share with our
Yeah.
guests,
Yeah.
please feel free to
Yeah.
do so.
Yes, well, I'm very proud of a film that I directed called I'm Fine that I did with Elizabeth Underwood. She plays the lead actress in the film. She's amazing, and she's also a producer on the project. She funded a huge portion of it. I found some funding as well. And then there's several other producers. There's Ed Banuel, who's a longtime collaborator of mine, Angie Ransom, Karen Minogue, as well as Carletta Hurt. And so that's a short film that should be hitting some film festivals soon. But then my features, Old Head is it's we're still working on the streaming for that. It was on Live Nation for a while, but it's coming back out. And so when that comes back out, I'll let everyone know. In terms of what Tony and Josh are doing, they're so amazing, and we're looking towards other possibilities too. And then there's Forgetting Christmas, which is another feature that I'm so proud of, and Cadell and Milan and Victoria Rowell, who was one of the leads in it, and we have Raisa Doyley, just an amazing cast, and our crew is awesome. That one should be streaming soon. So if they go to my website, kissthelimit.com, they can see some of my projects, but they can always email me at chandra@kissthelimit.com. And so, yeah, but I've got a whole another slate of a million and one things that I'm working on too, because I just love it. I love
Yeah.
storytelling. So there's a adaptation I'm doing from a children's novel with a writer named Joe Hackle called Smack Dab in the Middle of Maybe. So that, fingers crossed, that'll be the one that
Great.
I'm directing next summer. So, and I have a beautiful trans love story with Alexandra Gray and Lexus Fish and some other producers. So I'm just staying busy, but most importantly, finding stories with people. Errol Bailey and Ed Banuel, just stories and storytellers that are doing powerful things that I want to be a part of. Again, just wanting to transform lives and
Mm.
transform them through storytelling. So that's my focus.
That is phenomenal and transforming lives you are absolutely doing. So please feel free to follow and check in with Shandra, especially as she continues to launch these projects over the next couple of years that are coming. And be sure to check out her feature that is coming soon, as she
Yes.
mentioned as well. So
Yes.
thank you, Shandra, for taking the time to get again to grace the stage of
You're
Women with
amazing.
Grit. I'm going to do a quick recap just of some summary notes of things that I've captured, and then we will be out. But again, this has been just a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your time
Thank
and for
you.
sharing your story.
All right. Thank you.
So this has been such an amazing, amazing evening. I mean, we never have any shortage of just amazing and inspiring guests on Women with Grit, but I'm just going to share with you a couple of nuggets that Shandra pointed out. One, that sometimes the love and passion that we have can be found in our youth, right? And just, you talked about how she got into storytelling even as a youth, and that became a thread that carried her throughout life, and the ability to continue to share inspiring and provocative stories. Sometimes she even mentioned that she felt that it's easier to be a doctor than a filmmaker. So recognizing that even when things are complex, to continue to stick to it and push through it so that you can be positive, in position, and diligent to what is your purpose and what is uniquely defined for you. Find the people who believe in you and who continue to champion your success along the way. Create a spirit of generosity and be grateful for the opportunities that come your way, as well as the people and the challenges, and see those challenges, instead of them being challenges, as steps towards your success. Be respectful, lead with kindness is what she also mentioned. So in any space that you find yourself, treat people with the utmost respect and kindness, because you'll never know if your paths will cross, and you never know how much a smile can really enrich someone's day. Treat other people fairly, right? Recognize who's in your corner and championing your success. Build a community of support along the way, and recognize that it does not have to be perfect. It just has to be your best work. I love that Shandra said that, because sometimes we get stuck in, oh, if I could just have this one other thing, and then that stops the progress, and we get stuck on all the things that we need, when at the end of the day, even like the Wright brothers, they took flight because they worked with what they had. So continuing to build that out along the way. Remember your why, and remember the aspect of showing up every single day, being consistent to your craft, being consistent to yourself, recognizing that mistakes are a part of the process and that perfectionism can hurt you. Where is your faith, whether it be in yourself, in the confidence that you have, and the gifts that you have to offer, because those things help to fuel you in the area that you are determined to go. Have a grit about yourself when it comes to the determination, and even if something is or feels outside of reach, prepare a plan and then work your plan. Recognize that you don't be afraid to leave your comfort zone for the right opportunities, being comfortable stepping out into the unknown, and your faith will carry you to where you want to go. Create content. This is what she said to other filmmakers and those in the industry. Continue to create content over and over and over again. Recognize that you can continue to learn along the way. Also, try to find the opportunities that inspire you to continue to move in your craft, and then take one step at a time, the next and then the next, and recognize that it is more important to make effort and strides than it is to be perfect. Don't let the naysayers kill your dreams. Stand firm in what is consistent and what you know is true for you as well. So this has been such a dynamic time. Thank you again, Shandra, for gracing the stage of Women with Grit. And to you all, have a wonderful morning, evening, or night, wherever you might find yourself. And we will see you right here next week at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time and 7 p.m. Eastern on Women with Grit. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.